So CC goes on to say, in addition to the recording, he says, I never ever made money. I rather blew my account for the second consecutive time. Is that what you do on one-on-one session? Well, yes and no. The coaching session, the free coaching session available for trial members and subscribers, is a 45-minute one-on-one phone conversation. We'll walk you through the tools on the site, answer any question you have about tools, options, strategies, and management techniques. It's not only one session. You get as many free sessions as you want. Simply reserve a time that matches your schedule. It's not a sales call or sole purpose to make sure you're comfortable navigating the tools, so on and so forth. It's also not a mentoring program or advisory service. We can't give you direct recommendations on which stocks or options to trade. That being said, we can discuss the possible outcomes of a potential new trade, risks of trades you're entering, risk of a strategy approach you have been using as well, or adjusting an existing trade. First time scheduling a session to learn the tools, you might want to check out that video. Now, I don't know what strategy you're trading. We're trading, CC, whether you're doing covered calls, which are highly touted, and they're considered conservative income strategies if you're going in the money, because you can get a good downside protection, have a high probability of being assigned to making a 1% return, 1.5% return per month, maybe. Or perhaps, in those cases, I apologize, going week by week and making a 0.4 or 0.5% return with the in-the-money covered calls. Out-of-the-money naked puts, also considered relatively a conservative income strategy because you can go out of the money with a high probability. And CC says, no, only calls, no spreads, no other strategy. Okay, so buying call options. Long calls and such. So, long calls, leverage position. We're going to buy a call for 1/10th, 1/20th, 1/50th of the underlying price of the stock position. Rather than buy Amazon at 98, we're going to buy a 95 strike call, let's say, for $4.85 for a month out in time, hoping the stock goes up and that price that we paid at $4.85 or whatever, $5.85, goes up to $8, $9, $10, and we see a 20, 30% return. Maybe it goes up to $14 and we see a 90% return. And I see the same ads that you do, CC. It's my job as a director of education here at PowerOptions to keep my finger, lack of a better term, on the pulse of the market, also the pulse of what other competitors and people are saying. I see the same emails. Hey, we just closed out our 10th trade in a row for an average of a 90% profit, and they actually made 20 trades during that time. They didn't show you how they had to manage the others or roll the other long calls maybe 4 times, 5 times, 8 times as much out in time to not count it as a loss because they rolled it hoping the stock recovers and moves back up and they'll see a small profit on that roll opportunity. Long calls. Let's just take an example here. Useful strategy. I have fun with it. I use about 4 or 5. 98% of the time you trade it out of the money calls. Okay. Why am I out of the money search? Well, this is close. 109, 132, 130. These are at the money. So let's go with our out of the money search. I'm sorry. I thought I had an out of the money search here default. Static out of the money, high IV, static low IV. Let's try high IV. Okay. Lionsgate 570. Let's put in a check on this one real quick, CC. 10 and 150. Now, most of these are going to be lower price stocks, I can already tell, but I want to filter this down a bit. There we go. Okay, Horizon Pharmaceutical up there at 97.29, out of the money, maybe not as far as the money you want, 100 straight calls at 10.35. Where's a stock I know? That's probably part of the problem, these high volatilities. I don't see a lot of these a lot. Option Care Health is a third, that's at the money. All right, but in any case, GameStop, yeah, just at the money, 23.80, not as far as the money as you want, okay? Where I'm going with this is let's just take the GameStop one. Darling of the Reddit fields has been all over the map, as high as, Jesus, what was it, 300 at one point years ago, and flopping around as flopping around does, and little to no value, as you've seen with many of the Reddit stocks as well. All right, so here we go. The key to remember with this structure of a trade you're looking at, GameStop here, buying the 23.75 call. Jot this down, CC. Small price at 267. God, it's 10% of the stock price. So that's GameStop. It's high applied volatility. Hence the search I use. That was just for an example, not a search I recommend by any stretch of the imagination, CC. The lie of leverage works both ways. Now, I mentioned that I see the same emails that you do. Hey, we made 150% return on APA trade. We made 300% on XYZ. Come check out our record. You're also risking 100% of what you invest into a long call position. Why is that important? You're paying 1/10 of the stock price at $22.63. Okay, a little bit more, but roughly 1/10 of the stock price because you want to take advantage of the movement of the stock to see a 50, 60. Let's be honest, you're probably gunning for 120, 150% return, hoping to see that on a consistent basis. To be honest with you, that's really hard to do. There's a gentleman years and years ago who he called it the iron stomach strategy or the iron belly strategy. I can't remember what it was. As you mentioned, CC, what he did is he specifically would go out and place 10 to 20 deep out of the money calls 30 days at a time. This is before weeklies were available. And he said, I don't want you to trade this strategy with me unless you have an ironclad stomach, because you're going to lose 90% of the time. 90% of the time, you're going to see losses of close to 100% what I'm doing. The hope is that the 15 to 10% times that we win, we get this, which counters the losses that we experienced 8 or 9 times here. And he was accurate for 4 years in a row. The out-of-the-money positions that he was doing were right, only 15 to 20% of the time. His winners had an average of 160 to 170%. His losers had a loss of 90%. Why is that important? Because it is not a recipe for success. There is a tool that we offer on RadioActiveTrading.com where we talk about the married put limited risk approach, CC. And it's under the resources tab. And it's called the Trade Simulator tool. And this isn't going to necessarily make you a better judge of technicals, fundamentals, or stocks to select. This tool is designed to really give you a bird's eye view of, is your strategy that you're using, the expectations you have, going to give you a profit long term? Iron belly, ironclad structure, 175% average return on the winners, 90% on the losers, and the probability of loss will be nice and say just 81%. We take $10,000 and we invest $5,000 into each call trade. Let's go 25%. Let's do $2,500 into each call trade. So every time we open a series, we're opening 4 calls with 25% of our $10,000 starting amount. Bankrupt after 49 trades, 27 trades, 17 trades. Let's be more realistic. A long call approach with management. You might be looking for a good 65, let's call it, I'll be nice, I'll say 75% return on your winners that you close when you take a profit, and you're going to control your losses to 50%. Meaning if I paid $8 for a call and the market suddenly turns and I hit a $4 liquidation value, I'm going to close the position in that case, so I don't take more than a 50% loss. I'm not going to be right 81% of the time. You're lucky to be right 55% of the time, a little bit more than half. Start off with $10,000. You're right a little bit more than 50% of the time, great winning track record. But at one point, where are you? You're down 55% of where you started. That's the lie of leverage in action. This tool is flipping a coin 100 times, CC. Heads, I win 75%. Tails, I lose 50%. Probability of loss is 55%. That's only a 45% success rate. Let me change that so it'll look a little bit better. But random wins and losses. And so if you get a good win ratio, yeah, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for the home run. Realistically, you're down here. You're right only 45, 46, 47% of the time. You may think you're doing good. You've got a 46% return, but at one point over 100 trades, you're going to bring the account down by about 78%, and you're down 20% long term. 54% looking pretty good, but again, where are you going to be? At one point, you're going to be at a 50% loss. We still continue trading if you're to take your account down 50%. You told me that twice you blew up your account. Is blowing up your account a 70% loss, 50% loss, 40% loss of what you started with? I don't know. This is the lie of leverage in action. Okay? You need to be right in order to profit. And most people who I know who trade long calls are not right by this amount. The success rate is typically only about 50, 52, 50, 50 win-loss ratio. Let's put it right at 50, 50, even though I'm getting more on the winners than I'm making on the losers. Okay, do really good, but at one point here, we're down. Strings of wins and losses. Great, we started off with a bunch of wins, never gave it back up. Okay, so, and then here, we're back to where we were. Potential 20% loss, not bad, but long term, it's not going to give you the results that you want. Okay? You blew it up 96% the first time, later around 91%. All right, now, this is the same exact risk-reward graph of a long call, isn't it? It's a married put approach, what we prefer to use in our course called the Blueprint. And this teaches a structure of buying the stock and buying the put option to avoid the lie of leverage so that any position you enter stays with only single-digit risks. So for example, on GME, if I bought 100 shares of stock at $22.63, following my preferred pattern, I'd probably go deeper in the money, but I wouldn't be using this stock anyway. It wouldn't match the criteria for this. Yeah, I'd probably go out to June, 189 days out. I'm going to use the 25 put. You were on the 23.75, I think it was, call. I'm going to go deeper in the money because I'm going further out in time. That 23.75 strike's not available. I know this is going to be a risk higher than what I want because of the implied volatility of the position, 18.8%. But let's say your account size is smaller and you've been, or slightly smaller, and you've been playing around with positions. You've been playing around with long calls, maybe buying 5 or 10 at a time, and your account got blowed up 90%. And you say, well, I'm using leverage because I don't want to buy the stock. Well, if you took the money you were buying calls in, and you just did 100 shares of the position, the most you could lose is 18.8%, even if GME dropped to $5 per share. You're still going to be retaining $2,500 guaranteed of the $3,080 you put into the position, because the put guarantees you the right to close the stock. And of course, normally what we look for in this case, shown right on the search tool, are those risks of single digits, 5.8%, 7.8, 5.4, 6.3%. This is based on the default criteria discussed in that Blueprint course of what we look for the married put structure. Why is this important? On average, I don't expect to make 75%, but I expect to make 1.5% per month with this approach. So let's just say on average, I'm making 7.5%, but I'm controlling my losses to only 4.5%. Let's keep that 50-50 win-loss ratio. Here we're right only 50% of the time. We never lose any value. We end up with a 48% return after 100 trades. 53%. Okay, still looking good. We're not in the millions that we saw with the long calls, but we're also not seeing the large. Here we're wrong more often than right. 46 wins, 54 losses, still coming out with a 28% return. We're avoiding the lie of leverage. And why do I keep harping on this lie of leverage? I'm looking for a lower number. Let's put this down. Probability of loss to 55. Look at that. Terrible trading record. 36% winners. 64% losers. Biggest drawdown in the account was 12%. Ending amount, of course, we're going to lose money. We only lost 6%. The lie of leverage in action. What do I mean by that? If you lose 5% on your trade, you only need 5.3% to get back to break even. If you lose 10% on your trade, you don't need a 10% gain to get back to break even. You need an 11.1%. And then it starts to get slippery. Lie of leverage. You take a 25% loss on one of your long calls. You now need a 33% gain on what you have left to get back to break even. And if you take a 33% loss on one of your long calls, you now need to hit that target you were looking for. You need a 50% gain to get back to break even. And if you take a 50% loss on one of your long call positions, on what you have left from that trade, yep, you need a 100% gain on that next investment to get back to break even on that capital. Whereas we're in this range with the married put position. Even if I do take a 5 or 6% loss, I only need a 5.3, 6.6% gain over time on the next trade to get back to break even. That's what the goals are in that strategy. Okay. So you had gone on to say, and I'm just going to clear this up right now. We can save this for the coaching session. But you went on to say that, I'm sorry, that technical analysis to a certain extent, how much do you need to know for options trading? You made this BMXT trade for July. Can you take a look at it? Well, sure. But I'm not going to analyze it. What I'm trying to impress upon you is that it's not necessarily the technical analysis. It's not the strike selection that you're using. But in general, we do usually see better long-term success, I should say, with at or slightly in the money call options with management techniques, as opposed to trying to hit the home run with the out of the money options that too quickly go to a high percentage loss, even if you're out to July. So let's just take your BXMT. And I'm not even going to look at the stock, right, for this example. What I'm saying is you're out to July, you bought a 26 call. Price is irrelevant, but let's say you bought it for 110. All right, so you've got a break even at 26.93. The stock's at 23.70. If the stock moves up 10%, let's say to 25.70, in the next 10 to 15 days, should you expect a profit? Sure. Hey, let's go to Christmas. 12/23. Merry Christmas, CC. Yeah, so you paid 92.50 was midpoint, I'm sorry. And it'd be worth 238, so it'd have a profit of 145.50. Okay, so that would work. But do you really expect a 10% move in 14 days? I don't know the stock. I'm going to take a look at the chart, but I'm not going to give you any analysis on it. I'm just going to say, I don't see this moving really. Well, actually, if it recovers here, but based on the MACD movement, I think this is stagnating in this 24 to 23.50 range. But as time goes on, it gets worse and worse. What happens if this takes 40 days to reach a 10% gain? All right, you're still at a profit of 127, still above 100%. What if it takes 60 days? 113. Now that's also assuming that it doesn't fall in price. That's assuming that if this stock fell in price down to 20, you'd be near probably a 50, 60, 70% loss on what you initially paid for the position. I know that's more than 10%, but let's say the market goes wonky on us in the next 20 days. Yeah, so you're at a loss of 58.50 on the position. So about a little bit more than 50 or 60%. Would you probably close at that point? Probably. Okay. But again, what I'm trying to emphasize is that it's not necessarily the technical analysis. It's not necessarily that you're using out of the money calls versus in the money calls. It sounds to me more necessarily that you may not be practicing proper position sizing, and you are not using proper management to allow an account to go to a 90%. And now I know it can happen consistently. If you're closing long calls that are losing at 45%, 50% when they hit, and that just happens to you 7 or 8 times in a row, yes, you have to stop and say, maybe my stock analysis is completely wrong and I'm not picking the right stocks, which is, again, yes, Power Options can help you with that. Those default searches we have under the long call, the Bollinger Bands and so forth, are tested based on what we would use for this approach, okay? What I'm trying to emphasize here, I'm sorry, let me go back here, is that a proper structure in a different strategy that guarantees controlled risk while leaving the upside open gives you the control where you cannot blow up your account following the rules, and that's what's discussed in the blueprint. And the blueprint, of course, as I mentioned, is that full course on the married put approach that we use. And yes, Chuck, married put is always bullish. When I open a married put position, I am bullish. I'm looking for stocks that I feel are in an uptrend and are moving up in price. But the blueprint course discusses the full structure that we prefer to use for the married put. Oh, sorry, I wanted to go back here. For the married put, it is a bullish structure, but there are income methods I can use to actually profit to the downside if the stock starts to move against me. It is capital intensive to control risk to avoid the lie of leverage. And it's, I'm just going to say it's kind of appropriate that we're sort of going through this right now because starting on Monday, of course, I believe, possibly Tuesday, we're going to launch that end of year special bonus promotion for the blueprint, where if you pick up the blueprint between Tuesday the 13th and January 31st, we're offering the 8 special bonuses for the end of the year promotion, where you can get access to the Fusion subscription for a discounted price for 2 months. One of our videos, $89 value, the foundations of radioactive trading. The 4 insider secrets of trading, a compilation of our most watched radioactive trading videos. 1 month free of Power Options. The blueprint is now electronic access only. Of course, you get free email support and coaching session support from me as a blueprint owner as well as a Power Options customer. And there's a lot of members only content that I put together about the ins and outs of that strategy as well.